Hey there, and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we would try something a little different. I figured we'd have a nice cozy conversation about a book. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and get yourself a cup of coffee or a nice cup of tea, snuggle up under a blanket, and get ready, because we are here to talk A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. What is Little Hatred about? You might be asking yourself. Well, I'm going to just go ahead and read you guys the synopsis just to be safe. Alright, it says, laws are changing. On the blood-soaked borders of England, Leodan Brock struggles to win fame on the battlefield and defeat the marauding armies of Stour Nightfall. He hopes for help from the crown, but King Jezal's son, the feckless Prince Orzo, is a man who specializes in disappointments. Savine Danglocta, socialite, investor, and the daughter of the most feared man in the Union, plans to claw her way to the top of the slag heap of society by any means necessary. But the slums boil over with a rage that all the money in the world cannot control. The age of the machine dawns, but the age of magic refuses to die. With the help of the mad hill woman, Izern Efail, Rika struggles to control the blessing, or the curse, of the long eye. Glimpsing the future is one thing, but with the guiding hand of the first of the Magi still pulling the strings, changing it will be quite another. I goofed up. I have not read the First Law trilogy, and I figured this is the Age of Madness series, so I would just go with the first book in that, because that was one of the newer releases, and I could just jump on into, his writing and enjoy it. And don't get me wrong, you totally can, but I found out after reading that it does take place within the world of the First Law trilogy, and I probably would have liked to have started with that. I'll be honest, the reason I started with A Little Hatred was because it was what was available through my library, and I was like, well, I want to read something by Joe Abercrombie, so Age of Madness book 1, let's go! So that was why I started with this one, but I know now I should have probably started with First Law and then moved into the standalones and then into the Age of Madness. However, I don't personally, again, not having read the other books, I don't personally think that it will negatively impact me to have started with this particular book. Because even though some of the characters that are mentioned in this book are from previous installments in that world, I don't think it gave away anything, not that I can tell, that is going to ruin the stories of the other books for me. So hopefully that is the case, because I want to continue reading. We'll start with that. I loved this book. I thought it was amazing. It's very well written. I am definitely giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, and I will continue reading the rest of Joe Abercrombie's books, because if they're anything like this, I'm going to adore them. I loved several different things about the book. If I were to break it down, I would talk about the characters, the world building, the pacing, and his reveals, his twists throughout the story. So you are dropped in to the story. There is no real introduction. There's no exposition, really. It's just first page dropped into a skirmish, and you were from Leodan Brock's perspective, and you're getting one hint of what you think his character is. You think, and I'm trying not to, I don't want to do spoilers, I don't want to ruin things for people, so I'm not going to go into great detail about certain events or certain characters and their particular arcs, but you're dropped into the middle of this thing, and this is the very first page. That's even before you get to the title page or the copyright page. You just are dropped into a skirmish with Leodan Brock, and I think that's a pretty good example of what the entire story is like. It's obvious that the author, of course, is going to be creating the path for you to follow. Like, that's a given, because he's the one that wrote the book. So he's only letting you see the things he wants you to see. But by dropping you in the middle of somebody's life, in the middle of an event, as he does with all of his characters, you, as the reader, get the impression that you have the ability to judge that person based on the events that are unfolding, that you are getting an unbiased view into this person's life, that it's like turning on, just randomly into somebody's life. You're randomly tuning into it. What was that Jim Carrey movie? Oh, my husband loves it. I can't remember what it is. Oh, The Truman Show. It's like watching The Truman Show. You know, you get a random spot of somebody's life. Of course, not with the comedy. This is a grim, dark fantasy. But you're dropped into somebody's life, and you're just witnessing what's happening. There's no preface. There's no like, oh, this person is, you know, so and so, and this is what they're in charge of, or this is who they're related to, or this is who they're even talking to. It's just boom, there you are. And I really liked that, and I felt it fit with the style of a grim dark fantasy because you really are just in it, immediately immersed in it. You're trying to figure out what's going on. You're getting perspective, but it's not confusing. Like, it sounds like it would be confusing. It's not actually confusing. He writes in such a way that you're not constantly chasing your tail trying to figure out, okay, but then who is this person and why are they there, or what's going on in this, and for the tiniest moments where you are going, okay, what's actually happening, you're getting fed the information as you go, and it's not deterring you from your enjoyment. It's just part of it. It was exciting. Even the moments that were more, we'll say, mundane, which there really wasn't a whole lot of he's very purposeful with the things he chooses to reveal through his characters, because you are switching between a couple different perspectives, you know? Every moment, even if it seems insignificant, turns out to be important. It's not like he's only writing, you know, conversations that are, oh, well, that's gonna mean something. But it's like you kind of have to pay attention to how a person, you're paying attention to how the character speaks to somebody, or what they are or are not telling that person. It's not so much that what they are saying is important, but how they are saying it, what they're implying, their actions, and that helps you build up in your mind what this individual is like and what they are a part of. And so you start small with what they are involved in, and then it just grows and blossoms as the story continues, and suddenly you realize you're in this very intricate world, which again moves me on to my next topic, which is the world building. You don't notice that he has put you in this elaborate world until you're halfway through the book, because it feels so organic and natural, and you don't feel like you're being force-fed anything, even if in some spots you are getting a little bit of exposition, a little bit of background. You don't feel like it's being jammed down your throat, you know, you're just kind of picking it up as you go, and then eventually, like I said, halfway through, you realize you've put puzzle pieces together, and you're like, oh, but that goes here, and then this, oh, and that's what's going on. Okay, I get that. So, and again, for me, having been the person that didn't read the first Law trilogy and the standalones before getting into this book, other people might have been able to put things together a little quicker than I did, because, you know, I didn't have any background. I didn't know some of these characters that are mentioned in the story because I didn't read about them in the other books. But even still, I felt like he was able to give me enough to know who these people were and what they were about without making me feel like it was a summary of previous works. You know, I didn't feel like I was getting a whole lot of synopsis or, you know, previously on, you know, like none of that, which was really, really cool. And the world really is rather big and expansive, and he doesn't spend a whole lot of time breaking it down for you. It's just through the interactions that the characters have with the other characters and the governing systems, the environment itself, and that's how you're picking up it, is little by little, you know, through these things. So then, I guess moving from world building, we'll talk about pace. I never felt like it slowed out. Like, again, even I was saying the conversations were engaging. Each character, whether you liked them or not, you were hooked and wanted to know what they were going to be saying to this other person, or what they were going to be doing, or, you know, what meal they were eating. It didn't matter. You were engaged. You were enthralled. Things were happening even when it wasn't constant action. There was always something developing. And I have to say here, I did listen to the audiobook. I purchased the paperback so that I could have reference to do this review and so that I could write a more in-depth review for my blog. But I actually listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook was amazing. The narration is just phenomenal. And editing Sam is going to have to put in here who is the narrator. I apologize. I forgot to look that up. I know I wrote it down at some point, but I forgot to look it up before I started filming, so my bad. And the narrator's portrayal of each character was so individual and just delicious to listen to. I loved it. And it's not a short book. I mean, it's, how many pages is it? Let me see. It's 463. So it's not a giant fantasy book, because we all know that they can get to be like over 1,000 pages. But still, like, the audiobook was like, I want to say 17 hours. So it's a pretty decent sized audiobook. And I was listening to it while I was doing things around the house. I was listening to it when I would run errands. I'd have it on in my car, and I was just ready. I was ready, and I was picking it up and just, it was so good. So good. Sorry. So the pace was great. Like, it moved. It kept moving. I never felt lag. I always felt engaged. So A+ there, Mr. Abercrombie. And then honestly, getting into the twists, the turns, the reveals, they were good. They were really good. I think there was one reveal that I was like, oh, I mean, I get it, but did we have to? Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. It works for the story. It makes sense to me. It's a trope that I'm like, do we need more of this? Do we need more of this? I don't know. If you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But it was a heartfelt reveal, because I cared about, again, I'm not trying to give spoilers, I cared about these characters, and so to have that turn of events, it broke my heart, man. It broke my heart. So yeah, I don't want to talk anymore about that one, because if you haven't read it, I don't want to ruin it for you. But I mean, some of the other reveals, like, they were good. They were organic. They came about. And even if I was able to kind of see the direction of where he was going with the story, it still was really cool to watch the events unfold and go, oh, okay, all right, yeah, that's where you're going with that. All right, yeah. And then, like, it also, like, constantly keeping in my mind, like, okay, there's some prophecies going on. There's some foreshadowing of shit, and I'm trying to keep that in line as I'm listening to it. I'm like, okay, but does that tie back to this? And so I'm really eager to see how that continues to grow in the next book in the series. And of course now also, because I want to go back and I want to read the First Law trilogy, and I want to read the standalones. So to see how his world developed to get to this point, because of course, I guess I probably should have said this takes place after the First Law trilogy, and I think after some of the standalones, but I haven't looked at all the synopsis for the standalones, so I can't say for sure. But it does take place after those, to the best of my knowledge. So I want to go back and see the world that these particular characters weren't necessarily exposed to, but some of the other characters mentioned were part of. I think that's it for my rant and my conversation about A Little Hatred. I adored it. I thought it was great. I will continue reading Joe Abercrombie. I'm very excited to pick up the First Law, I keep saying series, it's a trilogy, First Law trilogy, and I will probably do that later this year. I've got a lot of books lined up for the next 2 months, so I'm not going to delve into it in the next 2 months, but probably later spring, early summer, I will be getting back into reading some more Abercrombie, because this was just, oh, it was amazing. I loved it. I adored it. Yeah, and I can't say enough good things about it. I'm sure there's some things I probably like was I can't even think of anything. I'm like, was there anything that I didn't like about it? Was there? Was there? I can't think of anything. So, anyway, if you have read the book, please be sure to like tell me your thoughts on it in the comments down below. And if you haven't read the book, let me know if you're interested. But if you have read the book and you are telling me whether or not you liked it in the comments below, please keep it spoiler free for the other people who would also like to read it, but don't want any spoilers. So yeah, thanks for that. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up and say thank you guys for joining me in this conversation. I plan to do more reviews like this that are just like, you know, cozy, casual kind of reviews where we just chat about what we liked instead of trying to do it in a more formal kind of way. I figure if you guys want a more in-depth review, you can always check out my blog. I have the links in the description down below. I will have more details and possibly quotes, excerpts from the book, discussions and things. And that goes for all of the books that I review. If you want something more in depth, you got to check out my blog, or I go a little bit into detail on my Goodreads, also linked down below. If you like what you saw here today, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to continue to see content like this, the conversational stuff, please be sure to subscribe so that you can get notified the moment I upload. Thanks, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!